Omnipresence, I am home. All pervading, I am home. All blessed, I am home. Oh, come to me, come to me, oh, come to my mother, come to me, come to me, oh, come to
It's very, very nice to be able to join you. As you can see, we are emanating from Ananda Village and our beautiful Temple of Light. I wish we could be with you in Seattle physically, but the time is not right for that this year. So perhaps next year we can be.
So we want to thank Nayaswamis Sriman and Padma for inviting us to be a part of your Seattle celebration for Masters, the anniversary of Masters coming to the West, the 100th anniversary. So we hope we'll share briefly today, but we hope throughout your event that you draw great inspiration and that you can be inspired once again with what Master brought to all of us. So Jyotish will begin.
Toward the end of Master's life, in fact, I think it was in the last week or so, Swami was with him for a little while privately, and Master had been giving hints that he was going to leave the body. Now, he obviously came to this country in 1920, so this was some 32 years later when he was getting ready to exit the body. And Swamiji asked, really on behalf of all of us, Master, when you leave the body, will you still be with us? And Master gave an absolutely beautiful answer. For those who think me near, I will be near. I was thinking about that. It's such a comforting thought. You know, those 10 words are among the most beautiful and comforting that Master ever uttered. For those who think me near, I will be near. And so what that means is that he wasn't going to leave us. He wasn't going to abandon us. He was still going to be here not only to be with those who think him near, but to help guide them, to help support them. I was reading recently a little section from Autobiography of a Yogi where Sri Yukteswar has resurrected, and Master is having this discussion with him in the chapter in the Autobiography of a Yogi called Resurrection of Sri Yukteswar. And he's talking about the astral world. And he said a couple of very interesting things. One was, he said that unlike from the physical plane to the astral plane, where on the physical plane we can't easily perceive the astral plane, from the astral plane you can easily perceive what's happening on the physical plane. So Master, being now presumably on the astral plane, is able to easily see what's going on in our lives. Now, obviously, everything has to do with consciousness in any case, and we talk about these different planes. The typical thought, of course, is that the astral plane is somewhere out there and up there, kind of the thought of heaven, astral plane being the yogi's terminology for heaven, that it's somehow up in the clouds and that the angels are there and their only work is to sit on clouds and strum a harp now and then. I don't know about you, but that idea of heaven absolutely frightens me. I can't imagine. I mean, I suppose I can imagine, but being in such a relaxed state that you would enjoy just sitting there doing nothing, maybe occasionally strumming a harp. Maybe that'd be nice for a day or two if you're really tired. After a week, would that maybe get a little bit tiresome? After a year strumming that harp, maybe not so fun anymore. After 5,000 years, because presumably heaven goes on for eternity. So after 1 billion years or so of strumming that harp, maybe that doesn't sound like such an idea. Well, that is not what happens. Sri Yukteswar said that in the astral world, he's now talking about the high astral plane of Hiranyaloka, where you have to be basically in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's your entrance ticket to that plane. So you're in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and one would think, well, you don't have any other responsibilities except to be in Samadhi. He said that the beings on Hiranyaloka are awake during the day and night of the long astral day. Most of the time they're awake. And while they're awake, they're busy working on the intricate problems of cosmic government. Doesn't sound a whole lot different from what we're doing now, except on a much bigger scale. So working, being productive, being active, because after all, we're an extension of God. We're an extension of God's consciousness. And unless we are, in tune, as long as God is manifesting, as long as this world is in manifesting, if we're a part of God's consciousness, then we're a part of doing that. And so Master is still a part of that. But he is able to easily shift his attention from the astral plane to the physical plane. He's able to guide us. So for those who think him near, he's right there with us. So that very, very comforting thought is there. The other aspect of it, one might say, is our part. In order to draw on him, it doesn't require very much, but it requires something. We have to think of him. How often during the day do you think of Master? How often when you're struggling do you think, Master, can you help me? I don't know which product to buy. I don't know what to do about this situation. I don't know how to talk with these people. Master, can you help me? If we think him near during our questioning of how to operate in this life, then he will be near. I read something very beautiful about Anandamoyi Ma. In terms of this, if you think of me, I will be there, which is what Master is saying. Someone asked her, Master, Ma, when people pray to you, do you receive those prayers? And she said something very interesting. She said, it's as if I see a crowd of people, and if, from her state of consciousness, seeing a crowd of people, she said, if someone prays to me or turns their attention to me, it's as if in that crowd of people, someone has shined a spotlight, and my attention goes to that person. So when we think of Master, we shine a spotlight of our consciousness. He sees that and he responds to us. Isn't that comforting? Isn't it wonderful to know that he's still there just as much as he was when he had a body? And in many ways, we have experienced with Swami Kriyananda, it's easier to feel him with us now that he's not in a body than it was when he was in a body. Because when he's inhabiting, or Master inhabiting a body, at that time you think of him located in that body. And if he's If you're one place and he's another place, then he's somewhere distant. But now he's omnipresent, and it's easier he of course always was, but it's easier for us to recognize that truth. And so for us, this beautiful thought, this comforting thought, this important thought, if you think me near, I will be near, can be a very great key to living our life successfully. Do think of Master. Do feel love for him in your heart, and he will respond.
Hello, everyone. Well, I've been asked to talk on the beautiful statement that Master made also, and which is, when I am gone, only love can take my place. The context of this was once a disciple asked him, Master, after you're gone, what can possibly replace you? A direct disciple. And Master, in response to that, said, when I am gone, only love can take my place. Well, what kind of love can take his place? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. It isn't just ordinary human love. It isn't emotions or that we have closeness for family or friends. It's of a different, I shouldn't say different, it embraces all of those things, but it raises them to a higher octave as well. And I think to understand it, we need to understand what is the love the Guru has for the disciple. And we have so many beautiful illustrations of this. And first of all, there's the example that Sri Yukteswar gave to us in autobiography of only wanting the best for the disciple. In the early days when Master was with Sri Yukteswar, he went up to the Himalayas and was gone for a period of time. And he came back and he fell at his Master's feet and he said, oh, sir, I'm so sorry. I must have disappointed you, abandoning all my responsibilities at the ashram. And Sri Yukteswar said, of course not. I'm not at all disturbed. I have no expectations of other people. All I want for you is your highest welfare. And so the Guru, that kind of love, without unconditional, without expectation, without performance standards, which we are so ingrained to think, well, if I do this, then I'll earn people's love. No, unconditional, the love of the Guru only wants our highest and best and what will make us happy. And we can abandon the Guru, we can turn our back. He will never turn his back on us. If the day we decide to walk back through the door of his grace, he will be there. The prodigal son, very important story in the Bible. The prodigal son, he who leaves, goes into the world, suffers. When he decides to come home, the metaphorical father, the Guru, says, welcome. We will have a great celebration. So unconditional love, wanting only the best. This is part of the Guru's love. But then also we have to balance it with impersonal. It isn't the kind of love that, I don't know, it just one-on-one. And Swami Kriyananda taught us this because he was so close, he was so natural, he was so loving, but at the same time, we always sensed there was a part of him that was not with us, that was with God, with Master. And once we hadn't seen him for quite a long time, and we went over to Assisi, where he was at the time, and I had been missing him on a personal level. And we got there, and he was busy, and he had programs, and he was gracious and loving, but I wanted more personal connection. And he picked up my thought, and he said to me, Devi, no one is special to me. I'm not even special to myself. And that was such an important lesson for me. That was his love any less because he was busy? No. But we had to tune in to the vibration of that impersonal love and realize that the marvelous thing, the miraculous thing is when you begin to understand and appreciate that impersonal love, you realize that it's so much more personal than normal human love, because it's not your personality, what you do together, the jokes you share. It's soul to soul. I saw a statement recently that Swami said, people say, I've created all these communities. He said, there is only one community, and for me, and that is the community of like-minded souls, wherever they are, whether I have met them or not. And so to understand the beauty of that profoundly deep and yet impersonal love, this is the love the Guru brings to us. And then finally, the love is practical. Wasn't Sri Yukteswar always practical with Master? You need to get this certain kind of bangle because the stars are going to be taking an unpleasant interest in you. You need to, and Babaji with Lahiri, before the initiation, drink this oil and then go lay down by the river and purify yourself. Always practical, always showing us like a mother. That's why Master had the concept of Divine Mother. This will help you. Do this, do that. And so when Master said, when I am gone, only love can take my place, we need to understand it's not just in our memory of, oh, he did this and he did that, but we too, if we want to feel him with us, if we want to replace, all of us never knew Master in this lifetime, but once I heard Swamiji say, much to my delight, another spiritual teacher was visiting and they were having lunch together and I was serving them. It was a large group. It was up at the meditation retreat dining room. And so I was right behind Swami, and I think he said this so I could hear it, I would imagine. He said, look at all these people so devoted to Master. They must have been with him in other lifetimes. And I was so happy that I could take the knife away or the plate or whatever it was, but I heard that. And so we need to understand the connection with the Guru is not one lifetime, it's many lifetimes. And we're just picking it up again in this lifetime. But if we want to replace that yearning, the best way to do it is to be a channel of the kind of love that he came in this world to express. Rajarsi Yogananda called him Premavatar, incarnation of divine love. And so we too, maybe we have shortcomings, maybe we have limitations and bad habits and weaknesses and failures. So be it. But we nevertheless have the capacity to be a channel for divine love. Nothing can stop that. And so if we, in thinking of these things, a love that's unconditional, always accepting, non-judging others, anybody, a love that's both impersonal and personal. So there's always the sweetness of God between you and the other person. And then finally, be practical in your love. Help those in need. Do what you can to improve their situation. And most important, do what you can to show them the way to real happiness through a spiritual life. So only love can take my place. And he is not gone. Master is as much with us as he ever was, but we will be more aware of his presence when we become a channel for his love. Thank you.
In showing you footage of the places Master visited in the greater Seattle area, it goes without saying that Paramhansa Yogananda is still alive and well at the Blue Lotus Temple in Seattle.
The Ananda community is only a few miles away from the Blue Lotus Temple, where about 50 residents live.
Yogananda's universal teachings and the universal spirit of his teachings are alive and well at East West Bookshop of Seattle, now located at the community.
Ananda Farm is a yoga ashram located 1 hour north from the Blue Lotus Temple on about 15 acres on Kameno Island.
My song is the story of the lilacs of May.
Yogananda's work continues then here in the Seattle area through the many activities of Ananda Sangha, but let's go back in time to the places he visited in the 1920s and again in 1933. His first visit to Seattle was in the fall of 1924. He first took a 26-day cruise up to Alaska and back before commencing a 2-week stint of programs in Seattle. In 1924 and again in 1933, his lectures took place at the Masonic Auditorium in Pine Street in Seattle. In more recent years, the Masonic Hall was converted to a theater called the Egyptian Theater, but alas, during COVID-19, the theater is now closed to the public. So we're going to stand outside and look at some of the advertisements that announced his lectures.
Welcome to the Egyptian Theater in downtown Seattle, Washington. Back in 1924, when Swami Yogananda first came here to give 2 weeks of lectures, it was the Masonic Auditorium. He came back again in 1933 to this location, and at another location we'll visit in 1925. He gave lectures on reincarnation, Mahatma Gandhi, on spiritual healing, on the laws of prosperity, law of success, and he was a very popular speaker. He placed ads on the entertainment page of the Seattle Times, along with all the movies and plays taking place during that time. It was Friday, July 5th, 1925. Free lecture, The Electrifying Truth About Your Own Dynamic Powers. The Masonic Auditorium, Everlasting Youth. Unique, tomorrow, 8 p.m., the lecture treat of the year. Hear the man who has thrilled thousands. Everlasting Youth at the Masonic Temple, no admission charge, inspiring music. All are welcome. Another thrilling lecture treat of the year. Swami Yogananda, 8 p.m., no admission, inspiring musical program on the topic Everlasting Youth, unrivaled new interpretation. June 15th, 1933, again 8 p.m., here at the Masonic Auditorium. Swami Yogananda, a lecture on the surest way to prosperity, new law of success, the greatest science of healing. 8 p.m. Here, India's greatest philosopher, poet.
Yogananda returned to Seattle a year later in July of 1925 and lectured at the Odd Fellows Temple just up the street from the Masonic Hall. You can see in this advertisement a free lecture 8 p.m. tonight on Friday, July 3rd, Electrifying Truth About Your Own Dynamic Powers. The night before, on July 2nd, it was the topic of training the superconscious for all-round success. On Sunday, July 5th, he did a mystical spiritual healing with healing prayer vibrations. And that evening, Sunday, July 5th, 8 p.m., a talk on spiritual marriage.
Welcome, everyone. We're here in Seattle, Washington, and the district known as Capitol Hill. This was the preserve long, long ago in the 20s and 30s of professors and teachers at the nearby University of Washington. And this building here was the home of Edith Bissett and her husband. Edith was later christened Sister Gyanamata by Paramhansa Yogananda, and is considered the most advanced woman disciple, living direct disciple of Paramhansa Yogananda. She lived here with her husband and their son Rex. Her husband was a renowned dean of the University of Washington Law School and was famous in his own right for books he wrote and so forth. But this is the home they shared. In 1924, Yogananda, on a visit to Seattle, got to meet Gyanamata here in the upstairs room where he blessed her. The story is, as I recall it, that she sent her son Rex to the lectures by Swami Yogananda nearby at the Odd Fellows Hall in order not to cast any shadow of critique on her esteemed husband's career. And so she sent her son Rex to listen to Yogananda. And then she invited Yogananda to her home where he blessed her. For many years thereafter, she kept a vase of flowers in the upstairs room where he stood and blessed her. And there they say that there is a watermark on the hardwood floor where those flowers, that vase, was kept year after year after year. Finally, in 1933, with her husband, I believe, who was perhaps ailing and probably older than she, gave permission for her to move to Mount Washington and to take sannyas vows as a renunciate there with Yoganandaji, her guru.
In his first 2 years, he didn't travel. For 3 years, he didn't travel. He came to America knowing that he had a mission here. He had been sent by the gurus to do this mission, to bring original Christianity back to the West, and also to bring back the original teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And he fulfilled both those purposes. But in the first years, he was getting used to America because he didn't know English very well when he came. And he lived in a little hotel room and taught classes and so on. But he was getting the feel for the country. Then he began lecturing, and he became the most popular speaker in America without any question. He had crowds of 5,000 coming to him again and again. There was a photographer in Washington when he went there that had a picture of him on the sidewalk, full-size picture. And he went to Calvin Coolidge, the president at that time, and he made a tremendous impact. But at the same time, he was looking for quality. And I remember there was a lecture where there were about 5,000 people in Minneapolis. And he said to Dr. Lewis at the time, who was present and pleased that there were so many, and he said, "We'll be lucky if we get 5 out of this 5,000. In other words, like William the Conqueror, he had to conquer a whole country, bring it to a new level of consciousness. Even when I came to him, I'd never heard the word yoga or guru or all those things. But in those days, nobody knew anything. And he had to somehow overcome their skepticism. And it took a long while, as when the snow falls on the ground, at first it melts. But gradually, as it cools the ground, then the ground is able to receive it. So when he came to America, many people, because he was such a dynamic personality and lectured with such power, people would come fascinated, but very few took it personally. The ground was still warm. Then gradually the snow settled, more and more people came, and then finally he lived at Mount Washington, began to train people. I have to say it was only toward the end of his life that his real disciples began to come. I don't mean he didn't have real disciples before then, but I would say the larger number of them came in the last 4 to 6 years of his life. There were all sorts of, famous Hollywood people and directors and actors, and it was a typical Beverly Hills scene there. And I must say I have to hand it to my guru for his courage when he was asked to speak, usually at a garden party, even though it's given for your benefit. You will say thank you for this beautiful party and thanks to all your guests, and it's wonderful to be here, and I've met so many wonderful people, and you go on in that vein for a while. Oh, nothing like that. He started in talking powerfully about communities, and he said youth must go north, south, east, west, everywhere to spread this ideal of cooperative communities, world brotherhood communities. And he said, I am sowing my thoughts in the ether, and my words shall not die. He was never invited back. It was a powerful talk, the most powerful talk I've ever heard. And I at least vowed that I would do what I could to make that a reality.
Master said, long, long ago, when I was sitting in Puri, and I was not able to talk English for even 2-3 minutes without making terrible errors, he said, you will be the one that is carrying this special dispensation of Babaji's words to America. And Lahari Maharaj predicted my birth, and that through this body many shall receive the spiritual enlightenment of India. Master told me. He said, you are the one. And when you go there, there'll be big halls, big auditoriums filled with thousands of people. And I laughed loudly, and he scolded me very hard. And he said, not yet. But when you are there, then you won't laugh. So I was shocked and remained seated there, and I couldn't see. So I felt within everything he said has come true. But it was such a stupendous thing. And I remember in Washington, D.C., when I was talking to 7,000 people a night, I remembered and I told the audience. First day I met Master in Benares, he told me that I was to go to America. And every week he reminded me of that. But he never told me to practice voice, lecture or anything. In fact, he always dissuaded me from reading books. And I thank him very much for that, for my mind would have been poisoned by books. I learned from the book of nature. In the ether is written and etched the writings of wisdom. And if we tune our soul with the Spirit of God, then we can read those etchings of wisdom, and we find we are filled and never empty. It's all due to him. And I remember one day I was sitting by him very still, and he said, you are not listening to me. I said, yes, sir, I can reproduce everything that you have said. He said, granted that. But when I contradicted him several times, he said, you are building 3 institutions. One in a forest-like place, one on a mountain top, one by the ocean. They will come later. Why think of them now? He predicted Ranchi, he predicted Mount Washington and Encinitas. And I was so shocked because in the background of my mind, I was making those. And also when I was in Kashmir by Swami Shankara's temple on a high hill, everything transformed, and this place at Mount Washington I saw on a hill. That's how I recognized. I found this place, and when I was coming in, my secretaries, everybody shouted, please do not go there, you will be arrested. And I came in and said, this place feels like ours. And then everything happened that this place became the headquarters of the work.
This year, Yogananda's 100th anniversary of coming to America marks my exact 50th anniversary of finding this spiritual classic, his spiritual classic, Autobiography of a Yogi. In my many blessed years of getting to represent Yogananda and Ananda to the public, I cannot tell you how many hundreds, if not thousands of times, people have said to me, "This book changed my life. It put my feet on a spiritual path." Perhaps not always his path, but always a spiritual path. Blessings.
Paramhansa Yogananda brought to the West the techniques of Kriya Yoga. In his autobiography, he describes this powerful meditation technique. He says that Kriya Yoga is a simple psychophysiological method by which the human blood is decarbonized and recharged with oxygen. A yogi who faithfully follows this technique is gradually freed from karma, the universal chain of causation. Babaji told Lahiri Mahashaya, "The Kriya Yoga which I am giving to the world through you is a revival of the same science which Krishna gave millenniums ago to Arjuna, which was later known to Patanjali and to Christ, St. John, St. Paul, and other disciples." The Bhagavad Gita states, "Even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings."
If you've read Autobiography of a Yogi, you can certainly recognize Paramhansa Yogananda as a wordsmith. He was truly a poet in the way that he approached language. But it's more than that. Yogananda said that his words carry his vibration. Yogananda wrote hundreds of poems. In his collection, Whispers from Eternity, he not only shared his poetry, but also a new form of prayer, a prayer demand. He tells us that as God's children, we should not beg. Rather, we should speak to God with conviction. Yogananda instructed us, "When I am only a dream, read from Whispers from Eternity. Eternally through it, I will talk to you."
Excerpted from Swami Kriyananda's Ananda Yoga was created. Ananda Yoga has been given to me, Swami Kriyananda, inwardly by Yogananda. Ananda Yoga is Master's teaching through me. I can feel his power. Ananda Yoga considers its contribution towards meditation and an inner life as the main thing.
Another aspect of Yogananda's teachings that he brought to the West was the coming direction and necessity of spiritual communities, what he called world brotherhood colonies. And in this, he stated very clearly that we need to be willing in ourselves to live holistic lifestyles together in community and with our mother and nature. In 1932 in East West magazine, he wrote about this. And he said in that you should buy land in the country and build 25 small cottages by your own labor on 20 acres of community-owned farmland. He went on to say all butter and milk should be obtained from homebred cows, and vegetables should be grown by the members of this spiritual farm on their own land. Lambs should be raised for wool for dresses, socks, and other articles. Hats should not be worn, and all people should wear sandals and go barefooted. There you have it. Let's go in that direction. Jai Guru.
Yogananda brought a new understanding of the life of renunciation. He showed it to be a life of self-transcendence and expansion, leading to oneness with God.
The ideal of an all-sided education for youth had always been close to my heart. I saw clearly the arid results of ordinary instruction, aimed only at the development of body and intellect. Moral and spiritual values, without whose appreciation no man can approach happiness, was yet lacking in the formal curriculum. I determined to found a school where children could develop into the full stature of adulthood. From these early beginnings emerged Ananda's school system, Education for Life.
From this book, The Need for Spiritual Communities and How to Start Them by Swami Kriyananda, Chapter 1. In his last years on earth, the great teacher Paramhansa Yogananda repeatedly and urgently spoke of a plan that he said was destined to become a basic social pattern for the new age: the formation of self-realization cooperative communities, or world brotherhood colonies, as he called them. In almost every public lecture, no matter what his announced topic, he would digress to urge people to act upon this proposal. The day will come, he predicted, when this idea will spread through the world like wildfire.
Living at Ananda has really taught me the truth of Yogananda's teaching about the difference between divine friendship and ordinary ego-driven friendship. Divine friendship is infinitely more stable, more happy, and more fulfilling. This is from part of Yogananda's poem about friendship. Friendship is noble, fruitful, holy, when two separate souls march in difference, yet in harmony, agreeing and disagreeing, glowingly improving diversely, with one common longing to find solace in true pleasure, when ne'er the lover seeks self-comfort at the cost of the one beloved. Then, in that garden of selflessness, fragrant friendship perfectly flowers.
This is a quote from Yogananda about radiant health. All cells, including those in the food we eat, have latent intelligence and can influence our mind and brain cells. Natural foods like raw fruits, vegetables, and nuts have a harmonious and strengthening effect on the mind and permit life energy to flow unimpeded through the body. In order to have magnetism, keep your body free from poisons. To have faith in God's healing power through the mind and to obey dietary laws is better than just to have faith in God and mental power and to disregard dietary laws.
As a young man, I wondered about success and how to become more successful, and through yoga practice and through meditation, I think I've found a way to be successful. As Master says, Paramhansa Yogananda, he is the wisest who seeks God. He is the most successful who has found God. So in this book, The Law of Success, he writes, "Is there a power that can reveal hidden veins of riches and uncover treasures which we never dreamed? Is there a force that we can call upon to give health, happiness, and spiritual enlightenment? The saints and sages of India teach that there is such a power. They have demonstrated the efficacy of truth principles that will work for you too, if you give them a fair trial. Your success in life does not altogether depend on ability and training. It also depends on your determination to grasp opportunities that are presented to you. Opportunities in life come by creation, not by chance. You yourself, whether now or in the past, including the past of former lives, have created all opportunities that arise in your path. Since you have earned them, use them to best advantage.
One of Paramhansa Yogananda's greatest gifts to the world was the energization exercises. These are a series of physical movements coupled with our breath and a flow of subtle energy. They are designed to demonstrate to each of us that we are not physical solid matter, but rather we are made of energy. They are the cornerstone of Yogananda's meditation techniques. Here's what Yogananda himself says about the energization exercises. They constitute an epoch-making discovery in the science of physical and inner culture. They cause the resurrection of dying tissue cells and worn-out faculties and the formation of billions of new cells and fresh faculties, all through the exercise rightly guided of will. The energization exercises will be found to be the surest and most effective remedy for bodily diseases in inharmonious conditions of the mind.
When Paramahansa Yogananda came to America 100 years ago, he called his work here in this country and in the West the second coming of Christ. That was a very bold statement to make. He brought to us a universal understanding of who Jesus was and what he represented, what the nature of his divinity and humanity was. About the second coming, about the Christ consciousness, he wrote, "Universal Christ consciousness appeared in the vehicle of Jesus, and now through these teachings of self-realization and these intuitionally received interpretations of the scriptures, the Christ consciousness is coming a second time to manifest through the consciousness of every true devotee." As St. John in his Gospel wrote, "And as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God."
In his mission showing the underlying unity of spiritual traditions of East and West, Yogananda was asked by Babaji to focus on original Christianity and original Hinduism. Yet, for Americans, Hinduism is often thought of as the tradition of snake charmers and multiple gods. So we might reasonably ask, does this request actually make sense? In their inner aspect, writes Swami Kriyananda, the ancient teachings of India are so broad-based that it seems almost a contradiction of the vastness of their vision to identify them uniquely with any specific religion. Hinduism has a plethora of symbols and images. It is endlessly complex and endlessly misunderstood. The way to understand the mission of the Hindus is to realize that the focus is on ultimate attainment, self-realization in God. It is not focused on the outer rituals, which are intended simply to remind us of God. The outer teachings of Hinduism developed out of an inner vision of the universal goal of all life.
Keys to the Gita and Mahabharata, excerpted from his booklet, Keys to the Bhagavad Gita. The Mahabharata, the epic in which the Bhagavad Gita is set, seems to be a story of rousing adventures and warfare, with many stories that seem more political than spiritual. But the key to it was supplied by Lahiri Mahashaya, our Guru's Guru's Guru. The real meaning of the Gita has long been known in India, but I don't know of anyone who brought it out as clearly as he did. And what Lahiri Mahashaya said is that each one of us is like a kingdom. It's a picture of the kingdom of the mind. Every citizen of the mind is a different psychological trait, and each psychological trait has its own life. Each trait is like a separate personality. And we find within our consciousness thousands of these different citizens, some of them noble, some of them ignoble, some altruistic, some selfish. And so we've got this constant struggle between darkness and light going on within ourselves.
This is a reading from Swami Kriyananda's book, The New Path, which describes Yogananda's vision of the soul's journey to self-realization, which is particularly inspiring. And finally, the realization dawns, I am spirit. This is the supreme state, nirvikalpa samadhi, or unqualified absorption, a condition changeless and eternal. It is the eternal spirit now, which animates his body, eats through it, teaches through it, and carries on all the normal functions of a human being. Divine freedom comes only with the attainment of nirvikalpa samadhi. When one becomes a jivan mukta, free, even living in a physical body. A jivan mukta, however, unimaginably high though his state is not yet fully emancipated. There remains even now, however, the memory of all those prior existences. All those old selves must be made over, their karma spiritualized and released into the infinite.
Paramhansa Yogananda made a valuable contribution to the world's history and literature in describing that which is undescribable, indescribable, the state of cosmic consciousness, known by many terms in the various faith and spiritual traditions around the world. Cosmic consciousness he experienced in his life and created a poem which he wrote on the New York subway. Nobody happened to notice him as he rode the subway up and down and wrote his famous, now famous poem, Samadhi. I'll just quote a few words. Thou art I am thou, knowing, knower, known as one. Tranquil, unbroken thrill, eternally living, ever new peace, enjoyable beyond imagination of expectancy, Samadhi bliss.
Although Master himself did not write a commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, in his early days lecturing in America, he used this teaching to explain a scientific approach to attain divine oneness. He said that the future of religion everywhere would be self-realization, the actual experience of the universal self. Later, Swami Kriyananda further expounded these teachings in his book, Demystifying Patanjali. He describes them as a stirring cry to transcend all religious differences. He says they are methods that can be tested and that can be proved. You can know God from personal experience.
Yogananda brought an entirely new style of chanting to the West. It was based on the repetition of meaningful phrases like, I am the bubble, make me the sea. Why, O mind, wanderest thou? Instead of the repetition of divine names, as is common in India. They're suited more to meditators and yogis who want to cooperate with divine grace by our own self-effort, and instead of just calling on the divine to help us out. Both are needed. They're chants that uplift and deepen our meditation and our spiritual life, rather than just stirring up sentiments and emotions. They're a direct path to self-realization.
These days, we use the word avatar to refer to a picture that represents us on the internet. But in the Hindu way of awakening, Swami Kriyananda writes that avatar means a descent of the Supreme Spirit into human form for the spiritual upliftment of mankind. The true meaning of avatar, Yogananda explained, applies to the descent into human form of any fully liberated soul who is sent down by God for the upliftment of a whole society and for the redemption of large numbers of earthly beings, a feat not possible for ordinary saints even after they become fully liberated.
On this 100th anniversary of Yogananda coming to the West, to America, I want to offer gratitude for perhaps the greatest gift that he has given to many of us, to the world, which was his direct disciple, Swami Kriyananda. Swami Kriyananda was a living embodiment of Yogananda's teachings, and as such, in his long life since he met Yogananda as a young man of 22, he was able to touch and change the lives with Yogananda's teachings and vibrations. Many, many millions of people. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Yoganandaji.
Wisdom